Hey, hi everybody, and welcome to Under the Hood. Under the Hood is all about patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. And I have a wonderful guest today, Joel Steele, who has some ideas of his own in terms of how all this stuff works and his mindset and things that happened to him and how he changed. So let me read you just a teeny little bit because he's going to tell you more. So he is a financial entrepreneur, a speaker, and the author of his new book called Life Switch: How to Experience the Power of Living On. He co-owns a financial firm. He helps people improve both their health and their wealth. They do go together. And he's part ownership of a group of the NBA G League, which we love basketball. And yes, he has a championship ring to prove it. So thank you, welcome, Joel. We're so happy to have you. And I always start this conversation with this question. Tell us a little bit about your family of origin, your background, some of the things that you think helped impact who you are today.
Yeah,
A
well,
little synopsis.
yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I can tell you, and we just experienced it at Thanksgiving, but my family's about this big. We have a very small family. And really growing up, it was me, my mom, and my brother. That was pretty much it. We saw my grandparents who were in their 90s for much of my recollection of them being around. So a very small family. And so I was really on my own quite a bit. My brother was there to a degree. We obviously didn't have a father in the picture. My mom tried to be there, but she was trying to run her business and put food on the table. And so I actually enjoyed it. I got to run free. I got to mature relatively quickly. I got myself in quite a bit of trouble. If you've read the back of the book, you'll see that I almost ended up in jail and dead because of it. I found myself staring down the barrel of 4 or 5 guns. I lost track how many, but clearly was going down the wrong path. So there were some pros and cons to having a small family nucleus.
And the fact that you had as much freedom probably as young as you were, right? So,
That's right.
what were some of the patterns within that, Joel, that really kind of stayed with you that helped you kind of transition beyond those barrels of those guns? What were some of the ones that you just kind of knew that you needed to make some changes?
Well, early on, I was fortunate to come across an experience where it started mentally, and it's really the premise of my book and my life in general. And it just hit me one day that I could do anything I wanted to do, and I wanted to prove it. And for me, I wanted to be able to run so fast I could fly. And I had this little experiment where, in my mind, I proved enough that I could do that if I really wanted to. And although that was the childhood sort of a fantasy, it was real enough to get me in my mind to realize that I could do anything I set my mind to. But
Hmm.
that got put on pause, and years after that, I just found myself going with the flow, trying to fit in, not really thinking about sky's the limit, more thinking about, who's this and who's that, and how do I look cool, and like a lot of people today, they get caught up with what's acceptable and they want to fit in. And that's what happened. And I fit in with, unfortunately, the wrong group of kids, like I mentioned earlier. But ultimately, once I realized I was going down the wrong path, I was standing in a police station at about 16 years old, and the cop said, "Which jail cell do you want?" And I was looking at two different jail cells, and I thought to myself, "Man, my choices have really gotten bad. I mean, if these are my options in life, cell block A or cell block B. I need to make a change." And so that scared me straight. I credit the cop for phrasing
Yes,
it that
for
way.
16-year-olds who, when they do that, I have three boys, and they have faced that option. Yes.
Yeah, so I half jokingly say if you're going to do some bad things, do it before you're an adult, before you're 18. But that's not really parental advice, so please take that with a grain of salt. But the point is, when I sort of hit bottom at that point in my life of some petty crimes and things like that, and realizing that
Mhm.
I was not the good kid, I was not a good person that I always thought I was because I had been, but the actions and things I was doing, it changed it. In my mind, I'm still the same guy, but it's like you're actually not that great of a person anymore. And that really tormented me because I always felt I was a good person and then I wasn't. And so the thing that was substantial about that moment was I built this burning urge at that point, or at least it was created in me, that I needed to help people. I felt so guilty for not helping people and for hurting people, stealing, things, electronics and stuff like that. Not physically hurting, but
Mm-hmm.
hurting people
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Hurting. It hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts when our personal stuff is taken. Yes, it
And
does.
I never thought of that. So that's also when I first discovered empathy and how powerful that is. And now in my role as a financial advisor, helping people plan with their money, their goals, dreams, and retirement, their legacy, a big part of my job is to get in other people's shoes and see what they're trying to do. So
Yes.
that was a big value add. But the main thing was the urge of wanting and needing to help people. I felt so guilty, this guilty complex, that for years after, when I would go through a store, I would carry things like my arms would be extended because I didn't want anyone to think I was stealing anything. I had this terrible
Yes.
guilty conscience. But helping people is ultimately what my purpose became. And it was helping people with their physiques as a personal trainer. It was helping them with the healthy restaurant I started, help people eat healthier in a world that's full of convenience stores and fast food restaurants. And then ultimately helping people with their finances. And then the evolution was helping people with their mindset, with their personal and professional growth. And that's what led me to where I am today.
It's really cool because really what you're describing, as I'm hearing it, is this guilt and the things that you did was really out of alignment with your core values, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm sure I haven't had a chance to read your book, but I know I have a pretty good sense about what it's about because we just kind of met the other day. But this idea of my behavior is over here and my values are over here, and there's something that's kind of nudging me and talking to me. So what I'm hearing that you're doing and that have done is put these two things together, that my behavior and my values match, right?
Right.
And when we do that, look at all the wonderful opportunities and things. You also talked about your consciousness. This is the way I kind of think about it again, is I don't know if I'm the fastest runner in the whole wide world, but I believe that I am, right? And if I believe that I am, I can go and prove, to the best of my ability, right? That I
Yeah.
could be that
Yeah.
fast runner, right?
Yeah.
So
And
tell
that's
us a
so
little,
powerful.
yeah, go ahead. Tell
No,
us a
that's
little
super
bit more about
powerful.
that.
Yeah, it's when you're young and you're impressionable as a kid, and as we get older, we become hardened. We start to say, no, 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 you can't do this. That's not how it is, and you can't do that. Why? Because I said so. That's how it works. These are terrible lines, terrible messages to give to kids. Kids are so resilient. They get knocked down, they get back up because they don't know anything different. They don't know what defeat is. They don't know what failure is. They're just doing. They're just being.
They're doing it.
Yeah, and that's what adults really should take a page out of kids' life. I talk about that as well. But as a young child, again, I just wasn't burdened. I just thought if I want to do something, why can't I do it? And maybe that's just the trait that I had is positive thinking and being a very optimistic and believing there's opportunity in anything. And I also I'm such a big fan of potential. The word potential gives me goosebumps because to me it's synonymous with the question, what if? And it's so exciting. And the cool thing about potential is when you think you hit it, you realize that there's more you can go. Like there's unlimited potential that everybody has. Well, hey, that's as good as I'm ever going to be. It's amazing. People do things that they never thought they would do because they stop thinking about these limits and these caps. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can score 50 points if I want to, or whatever they're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when you get rid of doubt and you think without limits, limitless thinking, you start to do these
So,
kinds of
so let me
things.
let me let me ask you this, Joel. So let's just say that I have this dream, you know, to be whatever it is, and it's not easy to get there, right? It's really not easy. And there's a saying that I heard in one training a long time. A lot of times people give up like, you know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes or a month before they're ready to hit that gold. I think that there's um, a, a, I forget the name of the author, right? It's 6 feet to gold, right?
Right.
That we give up before. How do you speak to, I'm not successful, it's not working. How do you kind of take care of that gap between this is where I am, I'm going to make this amount of money, I'm going to make this amount of money, but my finances are over here, or my grades are over here, or whatever it is, um, because that gap is where people give up,
Right, right.
right? So
Yeah,
tell
it's a
us.
real thing. It's a real thing. Well, look, if you're trying to get your car to move and you keep hitting the gas and you hear the sound and you hear the screeching and the engine revving, you've got to like check to make sure there's nothing in the way. There's nothing blocking the wheels. You have to make sure your emergency brake isn't on. You have to make sure you're in drive. And people in the world, a lot of times they aren't sure if they have barriers right there. So they feel like they're putting out this output, but maybe they have their emergency brake on, or maybe they're stuck or connected to something they need to break away. So there's so many different examples we can go down, but let's say someone who's in sales and they need to reach out to people. So they have to make sure that they have, the right products. Do they believe in those products, or are they putting up objections that they don't even realize? Because conviction comes through to people, whether you believe in something or you don't believe in it. If you're selling something that you don't own or you wouldn't buy and don't believe in, that's like being stuck in park. And even though
So
you're
I
making,
think you're also talking about that we need people in our lives to help reflect, maybe some of the things that we don't see. I always say your blind spots are blind.
right?
And
Yeah, I
everybody else
agree.
knows them. Everybody else knows them. What about you? So, who in your life has been kind of that kind of mentor, whether it's a coach or somebody that helped you reflect on things maybe that you didn't see?
Yeah, well, early in my restaurant business, I didn't have anybody. So I just would talk to everyone I could who had experience, but I was really on my own with that, and that was really tough. And maybe that's part of the reason why the restaurant failed. I didn't have as much of a check and balance system. I tried to bring in people, but it didn't work out for
Yes.
different reasons. In the financial business, I found success immediately, but then I started to get cold and I started to fade. My productivity was going down each of the first several months, and I thought about quitting in this business, which is a very challenging business. And even though I came into it in a in parts of the business that my mom, who was in the business, she was in totally different parts. She was doing like different kinds of mutual funds and some other
Hmm.
fixed investments like CDs, and I purposely came in and did totally other things like other investments, other vehicles, insurances, to be a master of that. So even though she couldn't help me with like the product knowledge and things like that, she helped me with the
Hmm.
mindset you want to have. And really one of those key takeaways was take each day at a time. Do the things that you know you need to do and just trust that process, trust in the system. And that was really helpful advice. And it's helpful advice to anyone in really any industry, one day at a time. If you can make one day a success and then just each day make them a series of successes, that's how you really build something. Everyone, I think, is looking for that, overnight success, but it's really built one day at a time.
It sure is. From somebody who, I've had many, many ups and downs along the path, but this idea of this belief in yourself, you know, and this big vision, I think is just so incredibly important because even in business, a lot of people are just like, what's the next? It, it's like we have to do both, right? So we have to have the vision of where we're going, so we know the path, so there's a map, right?
Yeah,
And at the
yeah,
same time, the only way we get there is one day at a time,
that's
right?
right. That's right.
So there are so many opposites and dichotomies that you're interested in talking about. It certainly has been my life's work of how do we kind of navigate these opposites. I'm over here and I want to be over here, and the books tell me this, and the consciousness tells me this, and this one tells me this, and yet my life doesn't look like that. So having the grit is such a big part of it. Tell us a little bit about your basketball journey and how that kind of fits into this whole big picture.
Yeah. Well, what you just described is such a secret to success in life. When you have a clear picture or destination of where you want to go and you keep that top of mind and in front of you, your whole body, your mind and your body gravitates towards that. And without that vision, you're just sort of floating, all over the place. And if you don't know, if you're at point A, want to get to point B, and you don't know those coordinates, you're going to just be going round and round in circles at best. And so having that vision is the key to everything in my mind. So one of those things in my life that was important was sports, specifically basketball. I was a huge basketball fan growing up. I played a little bit, nothing, nothing serious, but I just loved it. I went to the games, I followed the players. And when I went to college and then after, I completely had a hard stop with basketball. I didn't watch it, I didn't follow anybody. I just, it was like it didn't exist. And then about 10 years into my financial career, when I was doing well and making and saving money, I thought, instead of just doing traditional investing, how can I get back involved with basketball in a fun and interesting way? So that became my vision. It's okay, how can I do something? Well, I'm not going to go, play basketball at this point in my life. It's not going to work. But how can I be involved? I started to think, well, what about ownership? And so I reached out to the local NBA team, the Sixers, and their G League team at the time, and they were open to it because their team was so bad at that point that they were desperate for anything to mix it up. I remember they were giving away tickets. It was buy one get one free, and they were still struggling to get people to fill up the
Yes.
arena. So
Yes.
they were entertaining that, and it ended up not working out because they brought in a whole new management group and shook things up, and that was ultimately the process that was started at that time. But years later, I found another team that was a brand new team affiliated with the Denver Nuggets, and I met with the owner. And on my way out the door to meet the owner of the Grand Rapids Gold team, I said to my wife, I said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do this. I just want to meet the guy and see what he has to say."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. So you know what happened after that. So on the way home, I called her and said, "Okay, get the checkbook out," because it really just it hit the right chord. They didn't just say, "We'll send a check and maybe we'll send you one back later on." They said, "We'd love to have you be part of the family. If you want to be involved, we welcome involvement." And I thought this is great because I didn't want to just write the check. I wanted to be involved
To
in
be involved in
basketball,
the basketball, right? Exactly.
in the business of it, and it's been even better than I imagined. But if I didn't have the vision and I didn't look for an avenue or an opportunity, it never would have happened. And people ask me all the time, like, what, the Grand Rapids Gold, the Denver Nuggets, like, what are you doing? You're from southern New Jersey. Well, that was where the best opportunity was, and sometimes what you think you want might not be exactly what you want. So I was very open-minded to where I might end up, and I think it's the perfect fit.
Well, it sounds like a great story. And again, you bring in so many different pieces in just that story, right? Having the vision, the first one didn't work out. And, we just went to a car dealership the other day, and I read something about talking about it was This American Life, and the guy was saying, he says, people walk in and say, "I'm just looking, I'm not in the," he said, "You're in the car dealership." you know there's something that brought you here, you made your way here. So like when you said, I'm not buying anything, but you were primed because the vision was pulling you, right, and gravitating towards you. And this is, I think, in my work, I think the most challenging thing, kind of what we're kind of skirting around, is when you know these principles, life becomes actually relatively easy. It's not easy because we still have the obstacles, but the path becomes much clearer, right?
Yeah,
And yet,
simplify.
so much is out of our awareness. If you go back to when you were a kid, you were just doing, you were just doing what you thought you were doing, what your friends were doing, and so there's this path of getting to know yourself so well, right? Holding that vision and then looking at the obstacles. Is it me? Is it somebody else? Is something else going on? What do I have to do to get back on this path? And that's our challenge. And that's kind of what you kind of, I know, wrote in your book, and it certainly is my life's work of helping people to bring together and that alignment. This is who I am, right? And these are my actions. And how much do my actions match this alignment?
Yeah,
So whether you're a teenager, whether you're in the early stages of your career, whether in the later stages of the career, if you're in a place where you're ready to give back, um, because you financially have made it in certain ways, this is our work, right? Is to share
yeah.
this message.
That's right. That's right. You're so right. And I talk about it and I suggest everybody make a list of what's truly important to them, whether it's philanthropy, business, sports, family, friends. Just make this list of what's important to you without being influenced by anyone or anything else, and start to ask yourself, okay, are you doing things that align with these, or are there more things you could do? And when you put these down on paper and you see them, that you start to, again, gravitate towards them. And some people haven't had the luxury of living with passion during their careers, but it doesn't mean you just put that flame out. You still find ways to inject passion in and around the core of your day. So, we all have 24 hours and that's enough time. But if you're not thinking about things you're passionate about, then you're not going to be doing them for sure. Then they're just not going to happen.
Yes. So you're on a book tour and a podcast tour and sending out this message. How can people find you and find your book?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, bookjoelsteele.com. There's an E on the end. Or you can Google Joel Steele and the name of the book, Life Switch. So Google Joel Steele, Life Switch. You'll see different podcasts I've done. You'll see, of course, the website pop up, and you'll see some articles I've done. And you'll also see about the $1 Million Challenge that I'm doing, which is where if the book sells 1 million copies, I'm going to personally donate $1 million to charity, which will be voted by all the readers. And Tina, that has to do with the part of me that I want to give back. And giving back is I'm sharing my messages and lessons and all of that. But I feel like I feel like everybody has a book, so I think the book's fantastic. People will be entertained and inspired. But what people can feel if we're able to donate $1 million to charity and every single reader is a part of that, I mean, that's a massive win for everybody. And it's also proof of what I talk about in the book, that's anything is possible. Is it a big goal? Is it easy? No, but it's simple. It's the simple concept. And it's just amazing what people can do when they remove doubt, they have a set goal, they focus on it, and they just go full force in that direction.
So thank you, Joel. I think anybody listening to this can pick up your energy and your excitement and your passion and your generosity. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being a guest on Under the Hood.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely.